Professor Marieke Van Der Zalm, a researcher at the Desmond Tutu TB Centre, now joins us for more on this discussion, and she joins us via our video link. Professor, thank you so much for joining us this evening here on SABC News. Perhaps let's start off here. Just tell us more about this study, which was done by your centre, and why did you specifically prioritise children between the ages of 10 to 19 when looking at tuberculosis amongst the adolescents?
Yeah, thank you so much for addressing these important questions. So we wanted to study adolescents because this is often a forgotten group. So this is a group that falls between the ages between the children and the adults. And on top of that, we know that adolescents develop more adult-type TB disease, which is more destructive. So in principle, their lung disease can be more similar to what we also see in adults. But in combination with the fact that they still have developing lungs, I think this is a very critical group of individuals that we need to investigate and that we need to study. So do you want me to, shall I explain a little bit more about the study?
All right. So I think maybe let's deal with what does it actually mean when looking at post-tuberculosis, specifically for those aged between 10 to 19. Does this mean that they can live with it, for a very long period because their lungs are still developing?
So yeah, I think it's important to note that not all people that have TB will have a post-TB lung disease. And we are needing to figure out which individuals are mostly at risk of developing post-TB lung disease, both in children, adolescents, but also in adults, of course. So yes, a proportion of these adolescents and also in adults develop post-TB lung disease. And in our study, that was about estimated 2/3 of the adolescents, which is quite similar to the data that we see in adults, and therefore quite concerning.
And, looking at the importance of this research, how important was it for you and your colleagues to embark on this research, to figure out, what you say that the most forgotten ones are those aged 10 to 19?
Yeah, I think we are we're very happy to finally have some data showing that we need to start looking at adolescents as well, especially because the adult post-TB field is leading the field at the moment. And I think it's important to start including children and adolescents in a lot of the studies that are happening to prevent the long-term outcomes of TB in individuals. So thinking around giving medication to people that have TB to make sure that the lungs don't get damaged that much, but also thinking around treatment of people that are already suffering of post-TB lung disease.
And Professor, what were you looking for exactly in this research in which you conducted, and how long did it last for till you found out, the very, the important factors of this research?
So this study has multiple aims, and one of the aims was to look at post-TB lung disease. Other factors are to look at why adolescents are at higher risk of developing TB again. So if you look at the spectrum of TB disease, especially young children are at risk of developing TB, then it dips a little bit in children between the age of 5 to 10, and then it starts increasing again in adolescents. So to understand better why this is such a vulnerable group. I'm actually forgotten what your second question was.
I was just asking around, the importance of you doing this research and, how it impacts, young people.
Yeah, so like I said before, adolescents are still developing, so their lungs are still developing. It's also a critical period where certain behaviors are changing. So that includes not immediately seeking healthcare if you get ill, so a delayed presentation. but also people, adolescents start smoking or vaping, and these factors all have an impact on lung health. So it's a very important group to target and to make sure that we actually start improving the lungs of all our children and adolescents, and to not accept that TB or other lung diseases can have an impact in especially our South African population and a lot of other groups in low and middle income countries.
And according to your research, what does it say in terms of helping those aged between 10 and 19? What are the elements of you actually trying to curb TB and long or rather post-tuberculosis, what does that say in terms of trying to assist those in need between those ages?
Yeah, I think the most important thing, of course, in order to prevent post-TB lung disease is to prevent TB from happening in this important group. So I think making sure that there's increased awareness, making sure that people get diagnosed as soon as possible and get on the right treatment. And of course, the second part is then to get the appropriate treatment, so that is treating the TB as best as we can, but also considering some aspects of making sure that the damage to the lungs gets limited. And then I think we, of course, after that, we start thinking around, okay, there are problems after TB disease. How can we treat these people best? And that includes giving some lifestyle advice in terms of stop smoking, getting your vaccinations, making sure that your lungs are in optimal condition. So these are all very important aspects and things that we are studying further, including at the Desmond Tutu TB Center.
Yeah, and where to from here now for the center, in terms of continuing with this research? Is it something you're going to be keeping tabs on for the next couple of years?
Yes, for sure. So I think it's very important to see where these adolescents' lung health ends when they reach adulthood. So we would love to follow these adolescents up for longer. In addition, we have had studies ongoing since 2017 to look at young children, which is a little bit more challenging because it's more challenging to do their lung function, but we hopeful to show data very soon in that population, in that group of children as well. And then, of course, we would like to be involved in studies that investigate drugs that can be given during TB treatment. So thinking about interventions, including in adolescents and children, that can be given during TB treatment.
All right, Professor, thank you so much for your time this evening. That is Professor Marieke Van Der Zalm. She is a researcher at the Desmond Tutu TB Center, just giving us an insight there in terms of the research that has been conducted by the center.